For spine-chilling stories of sinister trespassers, revealed horrors and unexplained encounters, Sarah's eyes flew open. A sound sliced through the chill of the night, scratching, low and rhythmic, like nails dragging across wood. It was unmistakable, hacking at her serenity much like grief tore at her heart. In her small, cluttered living room, shadows danced beneath the flickering light. Tommy, her cheerful 7-year-old, slept soundly, blissfully unaware of the creeping terror lurking just beyond their white picket fence. She tried to brush it off as the neighborhood teens, but the sound clawed at her nerves. Each tap echoed with a sinister promise. Something malevolent was watching. Night after night, the scratching grew into a persistent tapping that resonated like a heartbeat in the quiet gloom. Outwardly, Glenwood Pines looked like the cozy, safe suburb it had always portrayed, a tapestry of tidy lawns and smiling faces, but Sarah's gut twisted. She kept vigil, her heart drumming in time with the uninvited presence outside, sending prickles of fear cascading down her spine. The neighbors, once a comforting sight, now seemed to wear masks of charm, hiding truths darker than the night. Were they complicit in whatever horror had begun to encroach upon her life? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that is happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The night stretched into an eternity of uncertainty. Were the whispers real? Panic clawed at her throat, and she found herself wandering the barren streets cloaked in darkness. Echoes of leaves rustling sent her heart racing. Just when she thought she couldn't keep going, she encountered Mrs. Hargrove, a reclusive old woman whose piercing gaze seemed to see through her. With a voice like broken glass, she spun a chilling tale of past families implausibly perfect without blemish only to vanish without a trace. Each word ignited a chilling awareness in Sarah. Could it be that the facade of Glenwood Pines was built on grave realities? She stumbled home, the laughter of her son fading away under the weight of the secrets she had uncovered. In the following days, the gentle tapping grew louder, no longer a mere summons, it was now a threat. Shadows flitted just outside her curtains, twisting into grotesque shapes that mocked her sanity. Every friendly neighbor's smile morphed into a menacing sneer. Sarah felt the icy breath of danger on her neck, with resolve flooding her veins. Sarah prepared for a confrontation. She stepped into the moonlight, the air thick with dread and urgency. As she approached the neighbor's yard, adrenaline surged through her. But their charming smiles offered her no comfort, only disinterest. Each polite nod felt like a taunt, and Sarah knew they were withholding something sinister. The stillness tightened around her, and dread settled heavily as she realized she was utterly alone. Would anyone believe her? As night fell again, the familiar taps pulled her back to the edge, whispering promises of horrors yet revealed. And as she turned toward the shadowed depths of her home, each heartbeat echoed with one chilling truth: unraveling the malevolent myths of Glenwood Pines might cost her more than peace it could cost her son. Standing paralyzed with fear, she looked back, her heart desperately pleading for safety, but the darkness smiled wider, eager to swallow them whole. The nightmares of suburban life were only just beginning. Sarah bolted upright, sweat clinging to her skin like a second layer. The scratching had morphed into something official, like a warning. A deep chill slithered through her, making the hair on her arms stand at attention. It was no longer the gentle scratches of nights past, it was a demanding rattle, a deliberate invitation that sent tremors through her bones. Tommy stirred beside her, mumbling in his sleep. Her heart raced, and she reached out instinctively, brushing her fingers against his cheek as if that could shield him from the impending doom. She wanted to cradle him, hold him tight against the storm brewing outside. But that storm had already rooted itself in their lives, creeping into their home and wrapping around her throat. The shadows in the room began to stretch and twirl, almost alive, as if they fed off her fear. Her breath quickened, she could almost hear the floorboards groaning under an unseen weight. She listened closely. The scratching outside transformed into a sinister tapping, now louder and more insistent. Somewhere, deep within her, a primal instinct urged her to investigate, to confront whatever lay beyond her door. Cautiously, she tiptoed to the front window, her heart pounding in sync with the persistent noise. The flickering porch light outside barely illuminated the yard. She peered through the lace curtains, squinting against the dimness, her pulse quickening. There it was again, a shadow, darker than the night itself, flickering at the edge of her vision. It vanished before she could fix her eyes on it, leaving only the echo of its presence behind. "Mom." Tommy's soft voice broke through her moment of terror, drawing her back from the abyss. She turned to find him blinking sleepily, his eyes still heavy with dreams. "What's wrong?" "Nothing, baby. Just stay in bed." Her voice trembled slightly, betraying the fear she was trying so hard to conceal. As she backed away from the window, a sudden wave of protective love surged through her, mingled with an icy terror. If the scratching was a threat, then it was a threat to her son, and she would not allow that. Not tonight. That as the hours dragged on, the sounds outside intensified. Now they weren't just taps, they morphed into rhythmic thuds, slapping against the walls, punctuated by an eerie silence that followed. Each pause felt like the calm before a storm. She could almost see the malicious entities lurking in the spaces between the dark. They were here, a horde of shadows, emboldened by her vulnerability. Sarah flicked on the TV, a futile attempt to drown out the noise with light and laughter. The glowing screen cast an otherworldly glow in the room, illuminating every corner, and she hoped it would push away the lurking shadows. But even the TV laugh track felt wrong, mocking her sense of safety. Then, just like that, the laughter fell silent. "Tommy." Panic seeped into her voice as she turned to find him asleep again, blissfully unaware. She bit her lip to stifle a scream, glancing back towards the window. The tap-tap-tap was replaced with hushed whispers that seemed to seep through the walls, slithering like serpents in the night. Resolutely, she snatched the baseball bat from the closet and clutched it like a lifeline. She steeled herself, knowing she had to face the darkness. With each step toward the door, her hands trembled, and her heart thundered. What was out there? What waited just beyond the threshold? There it was again. The noise. A whisper. Sarah, it echoed in her mind, chilling her to the marrow. She paused, her breath hitching in her throat, dread wrapping around her like a vice. Who or what was calling her name? As she gripped the doorknob, a scream echoed in the night. Not from her. From Tommy. Would she make it to him in time? Would she discover the secrets of Glenwood Pines before it consumed them both? Her heart sank. What else could be hiding just outside, waiting? Sarah flung the door open, adrenaline surging through her veins. The baseball bat felt heavy in her grip, an inadequate shield against the growing terror that flooded the narrow hallway. Tommy's scream had pierced the night, still echoing in her ears like a death knell. "Tommy!" she shouted, urgency drowning her reason. She dashed into his room, the flickering light of the TV casting distorted shadows along the walls. He lay there, tangled in his blanket, eyes wide open, face pale as if the very intensity of his fright had drained all color from his skin. "What is it, sweetheart?" she managed to whisper, panic clawing at her throat. "Something at the window." "Mommy." His voice cracked, trembling beneath the weight of horror. She turned, every instinct screaming at her to look outside. The window loomed like a dark portal, and she could feel the unmistakable presence of something or someone lurking beyond. "Stay here," she commanded, her voice steady even as her body shook. With each slow step towards the window, shadows seemed to stretch and curl around the edges of her vision. The whispers grew louder, sinister shapes entwining with the fabric of her fear. She approached, heart racing, and peered through the glass. Nothing. Only the emptiness of Glenwood Pines stared back at her. Yet something flickered. A moment passed, and then she saw it, eyes, glinting like sharp shards of glass, peering back at her. A figure stood at the edge of the yard, cloaked in darkness. It was unnaturally still, not even the wind dared disturb it. Sarah, the whisper slithered again, intoxicating and sweet, but it was the voice of a stranger, laden with malice. She recoiled from the window, the blood pounding in her ears. "Get away from the window, Tommy!" She yelled and rushed back to his side, wrapping her arms around him, trying to shield him from the unseen terror. The whispers outside transformed into a chorus of taunts. Each syllable felt like ice trickling down her spine. They weren't just words, they were threats, chilling promises of what awaited them in the dark corners of their home. "Mommy, I want to go, I want to go." Tommy sobbed, pressing his small body against her as if he could melt into her warmth. "It's okay, baby. It's okay. Just stay with me." Her voice shook as she scanned the room, looking for anything that could help. The baseball bat felt more like a burden than a weapon now. Suddenly, there was a loud crash outside, a window shattering into a million pieces. The sound sliced through the charged atmosphere, reverberating in her core. "Run!" She grabbed his hand, heart pounding, and they stumbled out of the room, the sound of splintering wood echoing behind them. They raced towards the front door, but as they reached it, the room was cast into a suffocating silence. The whispers had stopped, the shadows coiled back into their corners. She hesitated, afraid that whatever had come had suddenly retreated, only to strike again when they least expected it. "Go! Go!" Tommy cried, and she didn't need telling twice. Adrenaline spurred her forward as she flung the door open, revealing darkness beyond like an insurmountable wall, but just outside, at the threshold of their home, stood the figure no longer obscured by shadows. It was a woman, her hair long and wild, her eyes dark pools of hopelessness. When she parted her lips to speak, it sent a jolt of terror through Sarah. "They've come for you." The night swallowed her words whole, leaving behind a weight of dread that wrapped around Sarah's chest like unbreakable chains. What had she brought upon them? More importantly, who or what was this woman? As the sinister chorus of whispers began again, Sarah realized the true horror had only just begun. The figure stepped closer, slowly emerging from the shadows, her face illuminated by the pale light of a dying moon. Sarah's heart raced, each beat echoing like a war drum in her ears. She could see the woman's lips moving, but the words were lost amidst a surge of fear that enveloped her, drawing her further into the abyss. "Mommy, please!" Tommy whimpered, peering out from behind her, his tiny hands clutching the hem of her shirt. She could feel his fear, raw and palpable, a mirror to her own. "Stay back!" Sarah shouted, raising the baseball bat. It felt vulnerable in her grasp, like a twig against a tempest. The woman paused, her dark eyes boring into Sarah's soul. An overwhelming sense of despair washed over her, as though the woman carried the weight of 1,000 sorrows. "You must listen," the woman pressed, her voice cracked and broken. "They're coming for the boy. They won't stop. They can smell his fear." The whispers outside swelled again, a cacophony of hisses and laughter that clawed at Sarah's sanity. Instinctively, she stepped back, forcing Tommy behind her, her back pressed against the doorframe as the darkness threatened to swallow them whole. "Who? What do you mean?" Sarah managed to stammer, the baseball bat trembling in her hands. "The ones in the shadows," the woman continued, urgency creeping into her tone, "they desire him. You must drive them away. They will find their way in if you don't act fast." A flash of movement in the corner of her eye caught Sarah's attention. Out in the yard, shadows shifted and swirled, twisting like serpents under the sickly moonlight. Forms flickered in and out of view, grotesque shapes that only hinted at what lurked just outside the veil of darkness. "Mommy!" Tommy cried again, his voice a hitched gasp. He clutched at her tighter, nails digging into her skin. Panic surged through Sarah, a tidal wave of adrenaline washing over her. "Close your eyes, baby," she urged, trying to shield him from the nightmare unfolding outside. She turned back to the woman, desperate. "What do I do?" "Light!" the woman hissed, her sharp gaze darting towards the porch. "You must find the light. Draw the circle and protect him. Before Sarah could process the command, the shadows churned violently, as if sensing her hesitation. The whispers turned into howls, a cacophony of voices promising despair. The wind picked up, rattling the trees and sending a chill through her bones. Go! The woman screamed, shattering the faint connection to sanity Sarah had left. The urgency in her voice ignited a spark of courage. With trembling hands, Sarah yanked the door wider, dragging Tommy into the night as the darkness writhed and slithered. Stay close, she whispered fiercely, the words were half a command and half a vow as she led him toward the porch. The air was thick with anticipation, making each breath like a weight. Tommy's terrified eyes searched hers, an unspoken question hanging in the air. They dashed over the wooden steps, searching for the glow that would shield them from the encroaching doom. What had awakened this evil? And could mere light keep it at bay? As they fumbled for the lantern, a piercing shriek erupted from the shadows, freezing them in place. It's coming! Tommy squeaked, dread creeping into his voice. Panic bubbled up in Sarah's throat as she turned back toward the darkness. The woman was gone, swallowed by the night or perhaps by the horror lurking just beyond sight. In the depths of the yard, shadowy figures emerged from the gloom, faces twisted and eyes aflame with unearthly hunger. Mommy! What do we do? Tommy's voice trembled with raw fear. A rush of determination ignited within Sarah. We fight! She shouted, though her heart quaked at the thought. With the world drawing closer, the whispers converging into a menacing roar, she knew they either needed to ignite that light or succumb to the terror that crept ever nearer. What was going to break first, the shadows or her resolve? The night loomed large, and fate had only just begun to weave its sinister web around them. Sarah's breath quickened as the shadows lurked closer, forming solid shapes that elongated across the porch. It felt like they were reaching for her, fingers of darkness curling beneath the doorframe, eager for a taste of fear. She shoved Tommy back against the wall, the cold wood pressing into his small back. Just hold on to me, Tommy, she whispered, trying to keep her own voice steady despite the terror clawing at her insides. She darted her eyes around the porch. There! The lantern, almost hidden behind a stack of rotting wood. Time seemed to slow as she moved, each heartbeat hammering in her ears. With a quick motion, she snatched it up and flicked the switch. The flame hissed to life, casting harsh light into the creeping darkness, but the shadows didn't retreat. Instead, they recoiled momentarily like creatures burned, then surged forward again, undeterred. Each flicker of the candlelight revealed more grotesque faces, contorted with malice. Their laughter twisted into guttural growls that filled the air, each sound jabbing into her mind like a sharpened knife. Mommy, please! Tommy's voice broke again, piercing through the haze of horror that enveloped them. I'm scared. I know, she shouted back, clenching the bat tightly, her knuckles white. We have to stay strong. Draw the circle. The words of the woman rang in her ears, a lifeline in the chaos gripping her mind. Sarah felt her hands tremble as she shifted to the ground, frantically scratching in the dust with the tip of her boot. She drew a hasty line, completing an imperfect circle around them, glancing from side to side as if the shadows might pounce at any moment. Tommy, inside the circle. Now! She said urgently as he hesitated, still wide-eyed and frozen in fear. He jumped into the crude shape, eyes darting around themselves, searching for hidden terrors. Once he was secure, Sarah pushed the lantern into the dirt, its glow illuminating their makeshift sanctuary. But the shadows pressed at the perimeter, angry whispers echoing in her mind, promising despair. She could see them now in detail, skin stretched tight over bones, eyes like pools of darkness, grinning with a malicious hunger. The glimmers of light recoiled from their forms, as if they were allergic to it, yet the darkness refused to dissipate. Faster! Whispered a voice from somewhere deep within her as she crouched low within the protective glow, adrenaline making her limbs feel foreign and strained. With determination, Sarah raised the bat high, letting the glow catch against its wooden surface, hoping to amplify its effect. The shadows screeched in disarray, flickering like flame in the wind. But they pressed on. Stay back! You can't have him. She shouted, her resolve hardening as she felt the weight of her son's fear against her. Suddenly, the lantern flickered ominously. Pieces of darkness flickered out of the sight, but where one less shadow lurked, two more appeared, like a grotesque mockery of nature, encircling them tighter with every passing second. "Mommy, they're coming in." Tommy gasped, his voice trembling with the promise of what awaited them if they failed. Just then, in the far corner of her vision, she caught a glimpse of something, a flash of white. It corrupted her perception, momentarily disorienting her. She turned her head. A figure stood at the edge of the yard, cloaked in shimmering brightness. "Help us!" she cried, hoping the shadow could somehow hear her, but the apparition merely watched them, and the shadows crept closer, licking at the edges of their fragile protection. In a frenzied attempt to stabilize the circle, Sarah reached out to her son. "I want to let them take you. Not now. Not ever." But deep down, her resolve was faltering like a candle in a storm, the shadows roiling with a newfound frenzy as they sensed the fear playing within her heart. The lantern flickered again, a stutter in the light. As the darkness lunged, it whispered a question that sent ice through her veins. "What is the price of your resolve?" The ground beneath them trembled, a portent of worse horrors to come. Would their desperate light hold against the insatiable darkness? What deeper menace loomed beyond the shadows, and would Sarah find the strength to confront it? An icy breath washed over Sarah as the ground trembled, vibrating beneath her like a heartbeat. The shadows writhed, hungry and twisted, clawing for a way into their sanctuary. She could hear them, voices intertwining, low and mocking, taunting her with the secrets of her deepest fears. "What is the price of your resolve?" echoed throughout the air, filling her with a dread that no flickering light could dispel. Tommy clutched the dirt beneath him, knuckles white with tension. "Mommy, I don't want this." His voice trembled as he pulled back, eyes wide with terror. Sarah looked down at him, feeling both fierce love and paralyzing fear. The lantern sputtered again, its light flickering erratically as if sharing her panic. Panic clawed at her throat, gripping her. "Hold on to me, Tommy. Stay close." She fought to keep her voice steady. With each breath, the shadows laughed, tugging at the edges of the circle she had drawn. They were relentless. She could sense their hunger, tasting her fear as they inched closer, almost tangible now. "Mommy, they're in my head." Tommy shrieked, and in that moment, Sarah felt hot breath on her ear, dark whispers sliding in like serpents, promising doom and torment. "No!" she shouted at the nothingness, pinching her eyes shut, clawing for strength. The images behind her eyelids were horrifying visions of twisted figures dancing just beyond the light, their skeletal hands reaching for her son, for her. In a sudden surge, she opened her eyes and clutched the bat tighter. "Don't listen. They're liars," she yelled, forcing the words from her throat. "They want to tear us apart." Tommy pressed his small body against hers, but she could feel his resolve cracking like ice underfoot. "Mommy, I can't. With a reckless energy, she raised the bat above her head, like a warrior preparing for battle. She bashed it against the ground, sending shock waves of dirt and dust into the air. "You want us? You'll have to fight for it." The shadows howled in fury, an animalistic screech that sent shivers racing up her spine. The light flickered back, burning stronger as the bat crashed once more against the earth. But in that moment, the eerie figure at the edge of the yard, still cloaked in shimmering light, stepped forward, illuminating the area around it. It was impossibly still, with a face both beautiful and haunting, like a serene painting with a darkness beneath. "Find the heart," it whispered, words dancing through the chaos. "The heart holds the key." "What heart?" Sarah yelled, desperately trying to understand. The figure pointed behind her, into the shadows that writhed and lunged. For a heartbeat, the shadows paused, caught in the light as if contemplating their next move, but they recovered quickly, surging forth once again. "Hold strong," the figure urged, and for a moment, Sarah felt a warmth flow through her. A surge of hope, urgency, filled her lungs. But hope is a fragile thing, especially in the face of darkness. The shadows, sensing an opening, lunged as one entity, a flood of despair. As they converged on her and Tommy, Sarah was seized by the chilling realization that they might not escape this night. In one final desperate act, with the weight of her son against her, she screamed into the tempest of shadows, "We will not fall." As the darkness enveloped them, the world around her dimmed, and in the heartbeat before oblivion, she remembered the figure's words, "Find the heart." Just then, a fierce tremor shook the ground again, and the shadows hesitated. What did it all mean? What heart awaited discovery? Would they find salvation, or would the darkness consume them for good? The shadows hesitated, but only for a moment. The ground beneath them groaned, pulling Sarah deeper into a realm where light and hope twisted together in a macabre dance. Time lost meaning, each second stretching into eternity. "Mommy!" Tommy's cry sliced through her thoughts, raw and sharp. She could almost sense the darkness coiling around them, whispering its lies, promising an end to all suffering if only they surrendered. Her grip tightened on the bat, the cold metal grounding her against the horror pressing in. With a jolt, Sarah remembered the figure's words. "Find the heart." But the shadows encroached, covering her vision. She could feel them probing, seeking the cracks in her courage, searching for ways to suffocate her will. "What heart?" she whispered, fear clawing at her voice. "Behind you." The figure called again, its light shimmered hesitantly against the dark. Somehow, she could feel its confidence, a pulse of warmth in the icy grips of despair. But was it enough? She turned slowly, breath hitching in her throat as she confronted the darkness. There, swallowed and hidden, she saw the outline of something pulsing, a heart, not of flesh but made of shimmering shadow and light, beating in sync with her own racing pulse. "Tommy, hold on," she urged, her voice surging above the chaos. With every ounce of strength, she lifted the bat high. "I'm coming for you. Mommy, don't leave me." Tommy cried, but she could no longer feel the ground beneath them. She had to reach it. The heart was their only chance, their last flicker of hope in the abyss. As she lunged forward, darkness seized her legs like icy hands, dragging her down, gnawing at her resolve. The horror forced its way into her mind, visions of despair and failure spiraling around her. Yet, with each pull down, something inside Sarah ignited a burning intensity that screamed for survival. "Find the heart." The figure's voice echoed, she clung to it with fervor. "Let go of us," she shouted into the void, swinging the bat fiercely against the figures that swarmed around her. The shadows writhed back, but still they pressed forward, relentless. Tommy's small hands, now weakened, slipped from her grasp, and her heart plummeted into an abyss of panic. "No!" she yelled, a primal cry erupting from her core. In that moment, she felt everything shift. The air hummed, vibrating with energy as the heart pulsed more intensely, its magical glow pushing against the darkness. If she could just touch it. "Get away!" she screamed, swinging the bat again. It connected with something solid, and a shrill shriek echoed. The shadows recoiled as if wounded, and for a fleeting second, Sarah felt the light radiate with more strength. "Mommy!" Tommy's voice pierced through her fog of dread, desperate and fractured. The heart throbbed at the edge of her vision as shadows surged again, this time biting harder, twisting into barbed tendrils that wanted to ensnare her completely. "Find it! Tommy, I see it!" she shouted, her eyes wild as she fought against the creeping terror holding them hostage. "Mommy, please!" he pleaded, his trembling voice slicing through her steely determination. With one last desperate prayer, Sarah lunged toward the heart, feeling the shadows claw at her skin, stealing warmth, but she would not falter. She had to find the heart. She had to. As her fingers grazed its surface, the pulse surged, and suddenly, the darkness shrieked, a cacophony of despair erupting into the night. But as light surged around her, engulfing her and Tommy completely, she felt herself slipping away along with everything she knew. What dark truth lay entwined with the heart? What sacrifice awaited her as the shadows converged once more? The world twisted and blurred around Sarah. Light flickered, pulling her in and pushing her away as she clung to the glowing heart, fighting the shadows that clawed at her mind. It was a chaotic dance of hope and despair, each heartbeat resonating with the dread she felt coiling around her. "Tommy!" she screamed, her voice a fraying rope in the storm, barely holding on. The shadows howled, shrill and relentless, trying to drown her spirit. They whispered ancient secrets, truths she wasn't ready to confront. "No. I will not lose you." Her fingers curled around the heart, its energy rippling through her as if it throbbed with her very essence. And with it came flashes of memory, Tommy's laughter, the warmth of holding him close, the sweetness of his innocent gaze. Each surge fortified her resolve. But the shadows didn't relent. They seeped in, cold and biting, entangling her limbs, scraping against her skin in a haunting embrace. She swung the bat again, connecting with an unseeable force. It shrieked. Something snapped. But it wasn't enough. The darkness swirled back, eager and hungry. A burst of brilliance illuminated the space. She blinked, squinting against the radiant light. Behind that pulsing heart, she saw her son. Tommy's fearful face shined through the murkiness, his eyes wide with terror as he was tugged toward the abyss. She could feel the warmth of his small hand slipping from her grasp, the tremors of his panic rippling through the air like electric shocks. "Hold on, Tommy." She grasped tighter at the bat, determination igniting her limbs. The heart pulsed again, sending waves of energy into the shadows. For a moment, they recoiled. Sarah felt the light gathering strength and pushed with every bit of willpower she had left. "We can break this. Together." she urged, tears flooding her eyes as she glanced at her boy. "Mommy." The sound broke like glass in the darkness. The shadows pulled harder now, tearing at their bond, a tug of war between light and pure, jagged darkness. "Let him go," she roared back. Suddenly, she remembered. The heart wasn't just a source of hope, it demanded something of her, a sacrifice. What would she have to give? "Please." Tommy's voice cracked through her thoughts, raw and pleading. "Help me." She lowered her bat and, with a heavy heart, reached toward the warmth radiating from the heart. It felt so familiar, almost maternal. The moment her palm connected with its surface, a shock coursed through her, overwhelming and divine. Images flooded her mind, every choice, every moment she hesitated to protect him, each fear that kept her from fighting harder. And with each memory came the realization, love requires sacrifice, and she would do anything to save him. But as she began to pull away from the heart's warmth, shadows surged with a terrifying fury, tightening their grip, squeezing the life out of her resolve. Each breath felt heavy, suffocating. "I'm so scared," Tommy cried, thrashing against the shadows, his innocence threatened by the malevolence of this realm. In a fleeting moment of clarity, Sarah knew what she had to do. "I give myself for him," she shouted into the void, and as she uttered the words, the shadows recoiled again, lessons. She felt the heart respond, a pulse syncing perfectly with her declaration. But was her sacrifice enough? As the darkness began to fracture, she could see slivers of light piercing through the air, but the shadows were still crouching, ready to consume everything they touched. With all her remaining strength, Sarah screamed, "Come back, Tommy. I will fight for us." Would the heart accept her sacrifice? The shadows trembled. Or would they take everything she loved, leaving her trapped forever? And just as the light began to envelop her, enveloping whispers filled the air, threatening to overwhelm her resolve. The darkness screamed back, clawing at Sarah with phantom fingers, as the shadows pulsed around her, undulating like an angry sea. Her hearts raced, each thump echoing with the sound of Tommy's cries. "Mommy!" The wail twisted through the black, laced with desperation. It tore at her heart, a reminder that time was running out. She stood on the precipice of light and darkness, swinging her bat one more time as visions blurred before her eyes. She could see Tommy, lost and terrified. "Hold on, I'm coming." She pushed against the shadows wrapping tighter around her. They slithered along her legs, pulling her down, mocking her. With each second, the light grew dimmer, the shadows taller. She felt their cold bite, creeping like ice into her bones. "What do you want from me?" she shouted into the swirling blackness. But the shadows only responded with silence, a void expanding to swallow her prayers. Then a new voice sliced through the stillness, an echo, an old friend that sent shivers up her spine. "You think you can hold back the end?" it whispered, smooth as silk but heavy as lead. "This world is not yours to command." Sarah's breath hitched as she recognized that voice, a twisted reminder of her past, of choices she hadn't made, battles she hadn't fought. It was a voice she had silenced long ago, buried deep under layers of hope. "No. I refuse to believe that." As if stirring to life, the heart began to glow brighter, pushing back against the encroaching tendrils of shadow. Sweat dripped down her forehead, clawing at the small fragments of hope that festered between anguish. "I can't give up now," she whispered, half to herself and half to Tommy, who still seemed to float in the shimmering gap between light and dark. The shadows stirred, forming into shapes horrible, twisted versions of people she once knew. Friends, relatives, people lost to time, their faces marked by despair. "Join us, Sarah," they hissed in unison, their voices a chilling chorus. "There is no escape from your past. You can't save him. You can't save yourself. Stop it." She screamed, clutching the heart tighter. She was done allowing fear to overwhelm her. "You have no power." She swung the bat wildly, but her hits grew weaker, a dim echo against the roar of despair. With a flash of light, she felt the heart pull steadily, mocking the beat of her own heart. It was feeding off her pain, her resolve, reminding her of every regret, every mistake. Shadows coiled around her throat, hushed her cries, but somewhere in the depth of that beckoning dark, a sliver of hope flickered for Tommy. Another surge hit her, a wave of raw power radiating outwards as she willed the shadows to recede. The intensity of her thoughts crackled through the air like static, pushing the darkness back for a moment. "Why can't you see? You are destined to fail." They chanted, laughter like knives slicing through what remained of her sanity. But each raucous jeer only strengthened her will. She visualized Tommy breaking free, running to her. Wasn't he at the point of all this suffering? To save him? Sacrifice? She breathed, eyes burning with determination. "You want sacrifice?" The shadows writhed as if perceptive to the shift, churning angrily at her defiance. "This is my sacrifice." As she cried out, arms stretched wide, the heart pulsed furiously, light exploding in brilliant waves. The shadows howled like living nightmares, living phantoms of dread and despair. Tommy. His name thundered through her, a lifeline to smother the growing darkness. But in that moment of defiance, she began to feel it. Darkness swirling, wrapping around her like a lover's embrace laden with venom. It slipped in, tightening, drawing her into its abyss. Despair flooded her mind with grotesque visions of defeat. Had she miscalculated? Would she become another lost soul trapped forever? A figure materialized in the distance. Someone familiar yet distorted by shadows, reaching out. "Mommy," it echoed, a siren's call weighing heavy with dread. Just as she felt herself teetering on the edge of submission, a voice broke through, "Save me. Mommy." Suddenly, the ground shook, a violent twist of reality that threatened to plunge them all into darkness. Was it too late? Would the shadows take everything she loved, swallowing them whole? Or had she harnessed the light's power just in time? She couldn't know something crashed in the shadows, a huge rumble like thunder, churning the darkness around her. "I'll never give up." She shouted into the chaos, bracing against whatever horror awaited, but as the shadows lunged for her, a new terror revealed itself, leaving Sarah breathless. What emerged from the darkness was something she never expected, something worse than death. The figure was monstrous, a grotesque representation of every dark whisper she had ever feared. Shadows flowed from it like smoke, twisting around its limbs, and its mouth stretched into a grin that promised despair. Sarah's heart banged against her ribs as it loomed over her, eclipsing every ounce of light that it moved closer, its voice a chilling echo of everything that once haunted her. "You're exposed, Sarah. Your fears have brought you to this place. Your son will join the rest of us soon." "No!" she screamed, desperation seeping into her bones. She clutched the bat tighter, its weight a convenient reminder of strength. "You won't take him." Sarah felt the heart's energy thrumming through her veins, urging her forward. Tommy's terrified whimpers echoed in the depths of her mind. She couldn't let the shadows win. She had to act. With a primal scream, Sarah charged forward, swinging the bat with all her strength. The impact reverberated through her arms, a satisfying crack filling the space. The monster staggered back, hissing in rage, the shadows swirling erratically, but it wasn't enough. The darkness surged, moving like ink in water, reaching hungrily for her. "You think your small acts of bravery can shield you?" The creature's laughter clawed like nails down her spine, every sinister sound magnetizing the shadows until they crowded closer. "Mommy, I'm scared." Tommy cried out again, obliviously tracing the sepulchral grip of shadows cascading around him. Sarah felt the threads of despair tightening around her heart, threatening to strangle the last flicker of hope she held for them both. "No!" she bellowed, fists clenching around the bat. "I want to let you take him." She raised the bat high, summoning every ounce of energy she could muster. "Light! Please, give me strength!" she cried, remembering the woman's words. "Find the heart." Suddenly, the heart pulsed bright, and a blinding light exploded from it, cascading over everything in its wake. The shadows recoiled, shrieking as if scalded. The brightness washed over Sarah, filling her with courage and love. With one final push, she threw herself into the warmth. "Tommy, now! Jump to me!" she shouted urgently, instinct guiding her. Her boy's small form hesitated, held captive by the inky fingers of fear. But he trusted her. In that moment, he leaped, flying into the light, and she caught him in a fierce embrace that love flooded between them, the heart pulsed, and the shadows screamed, pulling back as if the bond of their mother and son was a relic of light strong enough to singe their malicious existence. The creature howled into the void, rage spilling from its lipless mouth, echoing around them like a vicious tempest. Engulfed in the brilliant light, Sarah felt Tommy trembling against her, and with renewed vigor, she pushed them both forward. "The heart!" she cried, fiercely gripping Tommy's hand. "We have to focus on it. We can beat the darkness." They ran toward the pulsating heart, leaving the shadows writhing behind. Each step they took seemed to sever the hold they had on their souls. Until finally, they reached it, a radiant orb of energy. "Together," she said, and as they both touched the heart, its light engulfed them, enveloping them in a cocoon of warmth like bright sunlight on a summer day. The shadows collided around them, trying to breach the luminous barrier. "No!" they hissed, clawing against the light but finding no foothold. The shadows broke apart, dissipating into nothing but whispers of their previous existence, and then, silence fell, the monstrous roar faded into the wind, swallowed by the light as they stood in complete stillness. Slowly, as if awakening from a long nightmare, the shadows withdrew completely, fading into the atmosphere like smoke drifting away. Sarah and Tommy found themselves standing in their living room, the gentle glow of morning light spilling through the curtains. The pressure of night vanished, replaced by a serene stillness. They were safe. "Mommy?" Tommy's voice broke the tranquil silence, and she pulled him close, warmth flooding her chest. "It's over, baby. We're safe now," she whispered back, tears cascading down her cheeks, a mix of relief and exhaustion. The fight had been fierce, but they had faced it together. As the sun streamed into their home, illuminating it with a golden hue. Sarah held Tommy close, steadying herself as she felt the weight of the world lift from her shoulders. Glenwood Pines appeared what it was meant to be, a place of love and safety once more, and away in the depths, the whispers faded. They had prevailed, but as the sun rose higher, piercing through the clouds and warming her heart, she felt a twinge deep inside. Would they always remember? The question lingered in the air, but for now, with her son safe in her embrace and their laughter filling the once ominous space, she allowed herself to simply be. "Come on, let us make breakfast," she said, swiping a hand across her tears. The feeling of fear gradually transformed into shared happiness as she ushered Tommy toward the kitchen. "Okay, Mommy." His smile was infectious, radiating innocence and purity. As they stepped into the sunshine together, Sarah knew, as long as they had each other, they could withstand even the darkest nights. She felt that love was their true strength and would guide them against whatever lurked in the shadows. Life would carry forward, but she would always remember, Tommy would always remember. Moments later, Sarah picked up her phone and scrolled to a new video. Excited, he tugged her arm as they entered the kitchen. A bright breakfast awaited them, a simple but meaningful scene of renewal in a world once threatened by darkness. If anything ever returned, she reminded herself, they would face it together. Now, in the silence of daylight, they had triumphed. This was just the beginning of their real story. Now, if you're still with us, this is your moment. Don't miss out. You need to subscribe now for more exclusive stories that will keep you on edge and storytelling like you've never seen. Smash that like button. Show your support in the comments. We want to hear your reactions and theories about this wild conclusion, and for the true fans out there, don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need a taste of this conclusion. Join us in weaving the next tale.